Hello, welcome again to another episode of ChargingDock podcast, where we gather, we have an opportunity to recharge, to restore for a better self and also for a better world. We know that as we live our daily life, it's important for us, like we'll do with our devices, to recharge our energy. So our hope is that we use this platform to encourage people to engage people, to recharge them, to just give them the nudges and the insight that they need to do better work for what they do and then to live a better life. In this episode today, I have with me a very wonderful person, somebody that I've respected for so long, that have built a very great social entrepreneur that has done a huge amount of work in the social impact space. I want with me Buki Shonibare, the Chief Executive Director of Invictus Africa. Thank you for joining us
Thank you so much
on
for
this
having
podcast
me.
today.
Thank you
Um,
for having me.
yeah, thank you again for this opportunity. And it's really good because we know that when we have the opportunity to come together, to just talk to ourselves, to just reflect as individuals, reflect as society, reflect on the work we do, because we wanted to think that sometimes the work is very engaging. But then when you begin to hear from other people, create that peer opportunity to just listen to people that have done, regardless of where you are in the journey. So the idea is to just create a space to just talk about the work. And then this particular series is about meet the founders series, impact founders. So we're having a series to just talk about meet different people who have done excellently wonderful job in the space within the shared impact space, and then we can hear the story. So thanks for taking out the time to be part of this episode of the show. So a good way to start. I always like to start by just asking the same question all the time. What's your story? So in this case, I'm saying, what's your social impact story? Because I know that the idea of doing social impact just doesn't just start. People always have a story behind that work. Choosing to do that work is not a regular thing that most people want to do, but something always leads to story. So please, what's your story?
Thank you, and thanks, Olalikon, for having me on this program. And I hope that by the time we are done, people will indeed be recharged. So my impact story is a personal one. It's one of abuse, is one of poverty, is one of deprivation. So by abuse, I mean that I was about age 12, 12 plus when I started experiencing some form of sexual abuse. Even though I didn't know it was called sexual abuse at the time, my dad's friend, who at the time we call Uncle Johnson, would come to the house and, touch me inappropriately. Um, the only thing I remember is the fact that he would want me not to tell my dad or tell my mom or tell anyone about it. And for some reason, even though I was too young to understand what was going on, there was a sense of wrongness in what he was doing and in how I felt, as a young child. So I didn't talk to anyone about it. I didn't tell my dad as he instructed. And what he would do is when he comes over to the house, he will buy more things for me as compared to my siblings. He would take care of me much more. So by the time I was 18 and I literally experienced a full-fledged, rape, it became quite clear that what Uncle Johnson had been doing, this is it, because this is you using your power and your influence over me to take something from me that I did not consent to. And so it was first of abuse. It was also of poverty because at the time my parents got divorced, things fell apart completely. Mom, dad, none of them had enough money. I had to move in with my mom. I remember we're living in a one-room apartment in Ikotunigbe. And sometimes we'll go to this very popular church in Ikoton and go and stand by the road and just beg people for money just for us to be able to eat. And so, as a result of that, also because we didn't have enough money, one of the things that also got affected was my education. So, I couldn't go to school. So, after secondary school was the peak for me. So when all of my friends were going to school, I wasn't going to school. I wasn't going to university
Right.
because we couldn't afford
All
it.
the money, yeah.
So what that then meant was that by the time that I started growing up, I really wanted to be a lawyer because first I wanted to fight for women like my mom who experienced domestic violence, but also girls like myself who were being sexually abused by those that we trust or those in positions of power
Wow.
and influence and authority over us. And so that was how I started doing the things that I do. So all of my work focuses on women and girls, but they are things that came as a result of my own personal story.
Wow, wow, that's interesting. That's one thing I always see. That's a trend. People that do this work, there has to be some personal experience that fuels the passion that actually makes the work. Because you must, when you experience something and you want to go hard away, you want to make it your life journey to make sure that no other person gets to experience those things again. And because you, and I'm so sorry to hear that story of that experience. And I think that I can see why. Because if anybody remembers, I mean, I got to know you from Bring Back Our Girls. I mean, this was a really big deal about, oh, it's about fighting for women. And I think you created a brand, you created around the impact of your work around just fighting for the girl child, working for women, just talking about women can actually do better. How do we deal with these challenges that is limiting women in our society? And that's what you've done your whole life and you've been working on.
You know, like I always say, somebody was asking me one time, because Bring Back Our Girls, that advocacy affected a lot of things in my life. It unearthed a lot of things. It brought to fore things that I had not, paid attention to. I wasn't just fighting on the street or carrying placards. I was also going to those communities. And then I would see poverty firsthand, girls not going to school, young girls like myself. But the key thing about the Bring Back Our Girls campaign was that it gave me a platform to fight Uncle Johnson and every abuser that I have experienced, to fight them in a way that I didn't have the power to when I was still too young or too weak to fight. So when people sometimes ask me, why did I throw myself so much into Bring Back Our Girls, it's because it's a personal fight.
Yeah, it
A
gets
lot
you.
of times advocacy is a fight.
Yeah, it's always a fight. It's always, and I think that's the personal touch. I mean, it doesn't. Most of the people that doesn't have that personal connection, they still do some work. But I think you always see the difference between those who has that personal connection to it. And I think this is really where it gets important. So my next question, I mean, of course, you had Bingo Wire Girls, you did other things around that time. And before then, you've always wanted to do this, and then you've had opportunity to do different things. And then now we know that the bulk of your work is centered around Invictus Africa. So my question is why, how do you transition from those initial efforts of just doing advocacy, working on the passion, trying to do something that you want to do, and then finally bringing it together in Invictus Africa? Tell us what are you doing with Invictus Africa at the moment?
The first time we started out with all of this social work that I do, we were registered at the Light Family Empowerment Foundation. I felt the name was too long and I wasn't connecting with it. Later, we changed names to Girl Child Africa. And then eventually, I thought, okay, not only girls are being affected by human rights abuses, boys are also being affected, men are being affected. Um, Females who are not necessarily girls in terms of young girls are also being affected. So we decided to change names to something that is more encompassing, but something that also portrays resilience, right? So we changed to Invictus Africa. Invictus means being invincible, being relentless, being strong, you know. So what we do at Invictus Africa is to promote human rights, right? But within that broad spectrum of human rights is gender equality. So we usually say that Invictus Africa is a civic organization that promotes human rights and gender equality through evidence-based and data-driven advocacies, legal and policy reviews, and capacity development. We drive our work through data. And why that is important and why that connects to my story is because we see a lot of data as to the number of people that have been abused, the number of people that are poor, the number of people that are out of school. But do we really capture that data, especially when we consider people who never speak up about their abuse, for instance? For me, it took me 17 years before I came out to ever talk about the fact that I was sexually abused. And that, is a result of men. There are many reasons why a lot of victims or survivors of sexual abuse don't come out to talk. So one question that keeps bugging me is that if we have a culture that does not silence victims and survivors and that accommodates their stories, and that we have an enabling environment such that when they speak up, they will be able to get the kind of justice they need. Then more people will speak and will have better data. So for me, all of the data is not well representative of the actual reality,
Absolutely, absolutely.
because many people, we still don't have a culture where more people can be bold enough to talk, and where we can have data that is actually accurate. So at Invictus Africa, data is then the basis for all of the advocacy work that I do. For us, with Humanity Index, we framed it around 5 key themes: gender-based violence, which is the one we launched recently, women's health, women's economic empowerment, women's political representation, and girl child education. 5 key themes affecting them. However, for each theme, what we now started doing is to now use indexes and indicators to rank states within Nigeria and all the countries that we are working. So for the gender-based violence, for instance, we have 5 key indicators, even though there are 20 and 5 indexes and there are 20 indicators.
Okay.
So the 5 indexes. So if we want to measure how a state is performing, we want to look at their laws and policies around prevention and response to gender-based violence. We want to look at the support systems that they have for victims and survivors. We want to look at how easy is it for people to access justice. Would they go to police station and they ask them, what were you wearing? And then we also want to look at what's the information and awareness system that the government is doing. Are they raising awareness? Is the awareness sensitive to persons living with disability? Do you do awareness whereas, for instance, there is sign language? And then we also want them to now look at budget and allocation, budget and spending. What are you allocating to gender-based violence prevention and response? All of this requires data, and that is what we do as Invictus
Excellent.
Africa.
So I'm going to take you back a little bit for the first response you had in terms of the journey to Invictus. So it's not like you started Invictus; you just changed the name of what you've always been doing over the years into Invictus. And I think that for most of the part, because this service is about shedding the light for those who want to do social impact work, who haven't gotten there, who are still in the initial stage of understanding, and then so that means that half of the time, the more you go, the deeper you get, the clearer you get about your vision or how you want to frame it, how you understand it. But some people always think that they have to get it all clear from the very beginning. You have to have the right name, you have to have the right name, the registration status, you have to have all of this. But sometimes you just start anyway. Start it as you understand it. Start it as it makes sense to you. And then over time, as you begin to navigate it, it's clearer, and then you can now make modifications. If you need to change the name, I mean, you've changed the name 3 times now, and then each of those times, it's like a different direction in your strategy and how you work at the organization, and then it's taking more it's reflective of the growth as well of your work, and then the impact of your work and how you understand it. And that the name is just now a representation of that shift.
Change. Yes,
absolutely.
I don't think vision is static. I think things keep changing. The things that I know now must reflect in how I do the things that I do. At some point, like I explained to you, and I think, let me say at this point, I started feeling less guilty about changing, my work or the name that we give the organization. It took us a long time to come out with the name Invictus Africa. In fact, at the time that we finished our registration, it was just that same time that the Invictus OB issue started happening in Nigeria.
Okay, there you go. There, I can imagine that.
We had finished registration. We needed to now unveil the new name, and then boom, Invictus OB issue happened. And then I knew some of my friends who I talked to about it said, "Buki, are you sure you want to go out with this name? Not at this time." And I said, "Well, are we going to tell Prince Harry to also change his Invictus Games?" Because he does this Invictus Games for Paralympics and all of that, simply because some Nigerian dude used, Invictus. But the point is that vision, I don't think vision is static. I think even though, yes, the things that you want to do, I'm passionate about human life. I've studied extensively around it. However, the way that I do that work now keeps changing. And that should also reflect.
And I think if that's actually to show that you're innovating, you're moving forward, that's good, because if you're not changing, I mean, that's why we do strategic plan 5 years. You can't just do strategic plan for 20 years. I mean, it's not going to happen, because the scope, the ecosystem you're working with change. Issues with change, things like that. I mean, we have SDGs, MDGs is not SDGs. So change is constant. I do agree with you in terms of how it's very important to actually do this there, to because we are probably the same. When we started the digital impact space, we started from eco, we changed to impact co. Now we are impact central. We're in the middle of changing to come to. But every so I can relate with that because every change is a reflection of a new tone, of a better tone, of a more
Of better
understanding. You are
understanding, yes.
consolidating what you're doing. You are trying to do it better, and then you feel like a name change is also part of that new strategy. And you know that, like, great.
Even and this is also for social entrepreneurs out there that are listening to us. At first, we registered fully as an NGO, but when we changed to Invictus Africa, we changed to a social enterprise. So we registered as a limited by guarantee, which is also one of the lessons that we have learned. We started considering sustainability. How do we make social impact, but still be able to make income so that we can be sustainable? Social enterprise registration at the CAC affords us that opportunity.
I mean, we were kind of like almost started talking about the other question I was going to ask about. What are the things do you think you knew that you know now that you should have probably should have known before now that just kind of like could have probably catapulted your progress faster or the way you work or the thing people, I mean, whatever it is at all. Can you just share some of those insights?
The way we do social work, a lot of times, because it is based on passion, our emotions and passion come through earlier than innovation. And I'm learning more now the impact of innovation. One of the challenges that we faced when we were growing as an organization, we are still growing, is the fact that funding was not coming. But the funding is out there. And then you see individuals and organizations getting this money, and then you're like, what's going on? But I realized that there has been a commonality, being able to communicate or sell the things that I want to do in an innovative way, in a way that is fundable, in a way that people can connect to, they can measure the impact, they know the target. But a lot of times, oh, girls are out of school, and then you just keep shouting, girls are out of school, girls are out of school. What's the innovative way? So that's one thing that I wish that I knew that I now know, the importance of innovation. The other thing that I wish I knew, and I'll connect this to the Blame Back Our Girls campaign, I wish that I knew that in advocacy, there are different ways of doing advocacy, and that if you use a straight jacketed or one tactic so many times, it defines your movement, and sometimes it can be counterproductive. So one of the approaches that we used quite a lot in the Bring Back Our Girls campaign was the confrontational approach to advocacy. So we'll carry placards, we'll occupy the streets, we'll go and block roads, we'll do all of those things. But that's a confrontational approach. But there are collaborative approach, where you still sit at the table, you have conversations with those that you will make the change happen, and so many other things. One thing that I have now also realized is that in the blend of, and we were doing that, we were doing those both confrontation and collaborative. We did more of the confrontation in terms of street protest, occupy, and all of that. And we did also the collaborative. But one thing I have now learned, which I wish I knew, is the importance of when to use which, and the importance of blending it. That's also one thing that I wish I knew. So for social entrepreneurs listening, it's important for you to know the different tactics that relate to or that can help you achieve the things that you are pushing for. When to use it, when not to use it. So there is a story in the Bible that I usually like to use, the story of the woman who went to lobby the judge for what she wanted. Not that she couldn't have carried placard, but she kept begging the judge. For me, I call it the stoop to conquer strategy, where you know when to stoop to conquer, but you also know when you need to shout. So for me, those are some of the things that I wish that I knew.
And I think the other question I was actually is interesting because one of the trends I've always known, especially in this part of our environment, of our society, or our space, I mean, one thing that's because you mentioned innovation, so I want to talk about collaboration, the importance of saying how that has helped your work so you can help us. Because I think that one thing we didn't do, we're very like, it's my thing, I'm the fourth person, I'm the founder, I'm the CEO. People just want to do things. But then you see a lot of people working in silos, and then you can only go as far alone. But together, people can go more. So and I think that's what I'm seeing within the space
Yes.
now. People are, so when you talk about the humanity index and you're talking about working with your budget, I was like, there you go. That's exactly what I'm
So
talking
for,
about.
for me, that's like one major insight that I want to share with social entrepreneurs, the importance of cross partnership. So if an Invictus Africa, which is a human rights organization, and not just human rights, more of a gender organization, if we partner with Women in Politics Forum, for instance, it's we still within the same space. Women, and all of that. But one thing I've come to realize is that such kind of partnership, we are talking to ourselves and we're working with ourselves. How about working with other institutions or NGOs whose work, cross fertilizes our own work? So by the time we came up with Humanity Index and there's a budget and spending component of it, we went to budget to say that you guys are those known for budget and spending. Budget has been doing that excellently. Let's partner on Humanity Index. A component of it relates to budget and spending. That is what you're bringing to the table. So one of the things that I've also learned that I wish I knew is that in your own work, and I'll quickly relate it to something that I realized. At the beginning of my work, we'll go to places where people are hungry, we'll share food, we'll give books and all of that. One thing I realized is that is not a sustainable approach.
Anybody can do that.
Anybody can do that, but that's not innovative. But that's not sustainable. It's not new. It's not scalable. It's not sustainable. In order to be able to do something innovative, which speaks to newness, which speaks to scalability, and which also speaks to sustainability, you have to be able to cross partner with organizations that can bring to the table the things that you don't
Some
have.
expertise that,
We
yeah.
have not been doing budget before now. Now, with our Malala funded project, which focuses on gender responsive education budgeting for the purpose of girl child education, who are we getting lessons from? Who are we getting insight from budget? So yesterday, for instance, I was having a conversation with Shewonigbide. We are trying to, Shewonigbide is the founder of Budget Foundation. We're trying to rank state index data relating to girl child education, but we're trying to rank state in terms of how they are budgeting for education in their state. Where do we get such kind of lessons or insight or collaboration with a budget foundation? So again, it's something that I've also had to learn. Don't keep feeding, be innovative, and in your implementation of your innovative ideas, cross partner with other organizations that are not necessarily within your own ecosystem.
Absolutely, I do agree. I do agree. Collaboration is very key. It's very important. It's just one thing that has to happen. Otherwise, you won't be able to grow. You won't be able to scale. You won't be able to sustain. And it's just like as we go, because we're all solving the problem. Development is a very complex problem, and it's all like interconnected. So you can't just do gender and think that if you're not doing gender, education is involved, health is involved, policy is involved, and you cannot just do. And you can't be master of everything. So people know that, but I think upcoming social entrepreneurs, people that are just trying to work in it, needs to understand. And I think those that are able to scale faster, progress, are people who are able to just tap into that, collaborative space and again work together and do all of that. Thank you very much for that. So my next question is just basically, it's still like, because you did mention how getting funding was very difficult when you first started. And I mean, funding is always going to be difficult. It doesn't, whether you're starting or anywhere, it's always, but again, the money is out there. You just have to be able to, how do you connect with people that have similar interests and then you can both they have what you need, you can give them what they also need to be able to, and that what gets to the leverage or the resources that you need to do what you're doing. So what I wanted to ask is about what's your best moment? Because in this space, what I deal with all the time, my biggest concern is I've been doing this for 5 years. I've been doing this for 10 years, but it's not working. It's not working. How can I sustain? I'm using my own money. I'm like, yes, but everybody has to have some period of input, some period of deepening yourself, going rooted into what you're doing. Then at some point, validation will come. Some people a little bit faster, some people a little bit longer, but I people like, so for you, what is that moment of validation that you felt like, you know what, at least I got one grant, or I got one, it might not even be money, I got one partnership, I got something that shows that I can do this. I mean, this is possible. Because again, you're building something that you're starting, you're founding it, you're bringing people along on this vision. So it's a journey. So can you please share?
My best moment will be when we got our first funding under Invictus Africa. It was during COVID-19. and it was Kamusiwa. It wasn't big money, but trust me, it was a good moment of validation. Um, During the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown, there was something that was happening that we later called the shadow pandemic. And that's because there has been this increase in sexual and gender-based violence during the lockdown. Women were locked in the same place with their abusive husbands, boyfriends, fathers sometimes. Boys and men were also locked in abusive relationships, psychologically abusive ones, sometimes physically abusive ones. And so Osiwa was concerned about the shadow pandemic, but most importantly, how women and girls were being affected during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so they needed some form of, program and project around that. And then, we, submitted proposal and everything. It was $20,000, but trust me, it was big money for us, because that was what we then used to start out a lot of the things. So for me, it is also just the importance of being validated. But within that period, there was a conversation, and somebody said, "Oh, which is behind the Victor's Africa?" At this time, of course, Invictus Africa just came out, people, nobody knew us and all of that. So the name just started trickling out. And somebody said, "Who is behind it?" And they said, "Oh, Buki Shonibare." And they said, "Oh, if it's Buki Shonibare, she will get the job done." And one thing I realized in that moment is a lot of times your name go before you.
Absolutely.
Which is why it is important for you to build your name, build a brand around your name, build the credibility around your name, build the innovativeness around your name. Let people be able to know who you are, what that name represents. One thing I've realized in the funding world is that a lot of times funders fund the organization, but most times they fund the founder or whoever is leading it. So for me, that was a big moment of validation. And then thereafter, we got a call from an international organization to say, "Buki, do you have data on this?" And I said, "No, we don't. Is it possible for you to collect the data within 2 weeks? Because we rely more on your data. We trust more on your data. We trust your data more than what we are seeing now." And I said, "Yes, but it will take us time to do our validation and authentication process. Give us also a period of time." And they said, "Yes, they will wait." I went back to my team and I said, "Guys, so organization just requested for our data." For us to be recognized and known and seen by that organization was a huge moment for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's one thing that people always forget. Or, I mean, it's a need that you have to like just keep pushing, keep trying what you're doing, because it's really difficult to build anything, to curate, to, when you're trying to like, and in an environment where the whole development sector is saying like, oh, there's a lot of international development money coming in, but yes and no. Yes, because government will get the system. We would want to support what the government is doing, and then they want to support the civil society sector as well. There's already all those established organizations, and those that have been doing this for years, they've mastered the art, they know what they're doing, they're delivering it. But for someone to just say, "I've got passion, I've got interest, I've got motivation, I'm starting," it takes some time, because now these people that you're asking to trust, and I like what you said about being able to, it needs some time to grow the work. I mean, this is really like sort of like revealing to me, because if you are excited about $20,000, about 5 years after you have done being back our girls, it takes time.
Yeah.
People don't understand that. People just feel like, oh, but then for me, I should say this honestly, like hearing this, like I saw what you did with the budget. I was like, oh, in my mind, if you ask me, there's a lot of money there. Like, you must have a lot of money. But again, the passion is there. So you get more mileage with little, because it's coming from a place of
Olalikon, going beyond passion, I really want to stress on innovation. There are so many people doing gender work. There are so many people doing human rights work. What is it that you are doing differently that no one is doing? Something that is unique. When we did a press conference for Humanity Index, when we launched Humanity Index, people were asking a lot of questions. Has this been done anywhere? In fact, when the idea came about 7 years ago, we were launching it just 7 years after. When the idea came, I remember middle of the night, I stood up. The first thing I went to Google was Humanity Index. The moment I saw it wasn't existing, I registered it on Google Host immediately. Just locked down the domain name. And then started building on the idea, developing the methodology, and all of that. But it's just to say that as social entrepreneurs, we must do things differently from what any other person is doing. That is what will set you apart.
No, I do agree. I do agree. I do 100% because I think we work in our work is around exploring, creating community for young people, for anyone that wants to do this work, and creating the support system for them. And then one of the key things that's important to that it's not the problem has been there before we were born. It's always going to be there one way or the other. But what sets you apart is how do you solve the problem in a new way, which is what you're saying about innovation. How do you use the same tools or different tactics, but in a way that people can see it, and then of course they're willing, even though we are new, the new will not matter because what you're bringing to the table is needed. It's important enough for you to be able to. Thank you very much. So I also like to ask, this other question around is still talking about what reflections that you're having about your journey and what you've done in terms of for these emerging entrepreneurs, what insight do you have? Top two, top three, whatever you feel like. We've touched on some of them already as we tag along, but then what would be your top insight? Like, okay, if you will give a 1-2 minute masterclass on succeeding as a social enterprise, what would this be?
So we've talked about the importance of innovation. We've talked about the importance of cross partnership. I also want to talk about the two other things that will be major insight. One is the importance of the use of data as evidence. I was taking a class yesterday, and one of the things that I was sharing with them is how I define strategy. I define strategy as how you move from a current state to a desired state, from a point A to a point B. And in the work of social entrepreneurship today, we all know, and it's not just in human rights or gender work, we all know that data is not available. One thing that I've come to realize is in all of the work that we do, there is the element of data. Data serves as evidence, and data justifies the work that you're doing. So if you say that you want access to justice for prisoners, what is the data saying regarding the current state of access to justice for prisoners? What is data saying regarding access to justice, the ideal state of access to justice for prisoners? So you can use, countrywide comparative analysis. You can, look at other countries. So what is another country doing in this regard? And what is the data saying in terms of the impact of that? So that in that cross analysis of the current state and the ideal state, you're able to use data to push for the things that you want to do.
Absolutely.
And one second thing that I want to say is the importance of people. People, not just as your staff. Everybody knows the importance of having the right people. But there is the set of people that you need as a social entrepreneur who are your Aarons and your Ors. And I will explain what that means. Permit me again, is a biblical example.
No, absolutely. So it's anyhow you can, you
Yes.
can experience it.
So apologies to our Muslim audience. So in the Bible, there's a story of Moses. And then during this war, Moses will get tired. When he gets tired and he can't raise his hand any longer, every time Moses raises his hands, they win the battle. But when his hand goes down, they are losing the battle. Aaron and Ur are two associates or close friends, quote unquote, of Moses. What they do is when they realize that each time this man raises his hand, we're winning. So when he gets tired and his hand goes down, Aaron and Ur will go and lift his hand and hold it there. And I believe that as social entrepreneurs, we must find our own Aarons and Urs. Because there are times you will get tired. There are times it doesn't make sense. There are times you will look at everything and then you ask yourself, with all of my investment, with all of the money that I'm putting in, with everything, is it making sense? Can I see the impact of what I'm doing? There are times you get rejection letters. There are times they will tell you they can't fund you. There are times that you apply for $10,000, they will give you $1,000. All of those times, there are times that discouragement was setting. Who are the people you can cry to and talk to and just be able to bear your mind and get the kind of refueling, the recharging that you need that no other person can give you. So your staff, yes, skilled staff, dedicated staff, yes, they will do the work, but they are not the people that you will cry to.
Sure.
So I really want to share that as an insight. As social entrepreneurs, find your areas and ours who will lift your hands when they get tired.
Yeah. I want to ask this other question because I think it's important. You already kind of like touched on it already. It's interesting how this thing just like connect, but it's just the question around rejection. You talk about it. You're so much passionate about what you do. When you draft ideas in your head, it's so crystal clear. I mean, if you're saying that it took 7 years after you had the idea of doing
Humanity index.
before you have the resources to actually get it done and do it the way. And it's actually even good because I think that even if you had that money in 7 years, I don't think that your level of the way the execution will be the same 7 years after because you've grown professionally as well. So I think that also feed into your work. You've gone to school more, you've had more exposure. Things are just different now. So it's always better. So what do you think? I mean, those rejections are maybe more, or maybe the painful ones. Talk about the good validation moment, but how do you think that people should handle people in this sector, people doing this work? Passion is great, vision is great, excellent. You're so committed to the work, but then you're writing those grants and then they're saying no, we can't fund you at this moment. You're writing those fellowship letters and they're saying no, you're not enough, and then you're like, what do I need to do? I just spent this last week dealing with one of my mentees, and then I was trying to tell him that, and he was supposed to go to a conference and they didn't get a visa to go, and they were so excited. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna. I'm like, calm down. Don't worry. You will get a million visits to do a lot more, but it's fine. But it's tough. So please share with us.
So the thing about rejection is the fact that it can be painful, but one key thing is how you feel invalidated. You feel like you are not worthy. You feel like your ideas don't make sense. This is you waking up and now you are a social entrepreneur, you're a creative person. How you think of an idea and then you put in all of the effort, it just didn't work, and then the idea is thrown out or rejected. So there is that sense of invalidation that comes with it. One thing that I have learned in terms of dealing with rejection is first of all to know why the rejection happened. What's the reason that was given? So I applied for a visa to a particular country once, long time ago, and they rejected me. Just giving that as an example, and I felt very terrible. And one of the things that was said in that visa in the letter was that we are not going to come back. Gosh, that we are concerned we won't come back, something like that. And in my mind, I'm like, with
All the things I
everything
want
that
to
I'm doing
do.
right now, you think this is the time for me to run away? People who are running away, they are not being rejected. Visa. How come I'm the one that is being rejected? The good ones suffer. I was angry and everything. Then I realized the mistake that I made. The mistake that I made, how they will expect that your money should have been in your account for a long period of time. I printed out my bank statement a day after I put in the money that I required. It's against the rules, right?
Yeah.
So the point I want to make is that go back to know why the rejection happened, identify it. So for us, for some of the rejections that we have faced as an organization, are issues around the fact that we didn't have proper operational processes or policies, we were short-staffed, we didn't have enough resources to do, we didn't have proper documentations, we weren't doing auditing of our accounts, we weren't publishing auditing of our accounts, all of those things that an average funder would expect. We didn't have any of that. So once I knew all of that, we started putting them. They were not things that we were doing intentionally, but they were things that we were not doing because we didn't have enough resources.
We have not grown to that point to be able to do it that way.
I mean, there was a time we didn't have an account officer. Now that we have an account officer and I see the volume of work that she does, shout out to Joy Edo, who is our finance officer. When I see the amount of work that she does, I'm like, see how much we have been missing just by not having someone who is skilled enough to be able to do that. So for me, it is not dwelling so much. Yes, there will be that phase where you dwell on the rejection, the effect of the rejection, but there should also be that phase where you dust yourself up and you ask yourself critically, objectively, why was I rejected? And work on those things, then reapplied. So, of course, when I reapplied for the visa and I put all of these things in place, there was no issue.
Which is I mean, I think this is just like a life thing. I mean, it's not even whether you're an entrepreneur, you're a work person, whatever you do, even you're not working in social impact space. I think for anyone, we know that that rejection is a sign of sometimes, in your own assessment, you're good enough, you're excellent, everything is working fine, you should have what you're requesting for. But people have made that decision. But I think that personally, I take solace in the idea that you need to hear how we're human beings. People just share their success stories. They barely talk about rejection. So you don't know. Everybody gets rejected, even the biggest of the biggest pastors. I mean, we just had an election. Some people did not win. It's rejection. I mean, they had the followership, they did the work, but they didn't win the election. They didn't get the outcome that they desired. That's it. So anybody can get rejected at different level, at different way for different things. So
At
they
different
learn.
stages.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
now we're talking about Victor's archive. Even the forefathers of NGO work that have gone ahead of us, they still get rejected.
Exactly.
So at different stages,
Yeah,
different things will
exactly. So,
happen.
and when you know that, and just like you said, you want to go do the hard work. I mean, do whatever it is that is missing. It's a signal that, okay, there's something you
There's
could do
still more.
better, and then try again, find yourself. It might be tough, it might be difficult, but it's doable because we have examples. And that's why we're doing this series around Minty Founders to show that there are people that are just, they're not extraordinary beings. They just had the same ideas. They just, they worked on it, they do what they need to do, and over time. I think one of the biggest thing you can always take about is like find why, ask why, see what there's something you can do, work from your hand. Sometimes there's really nothing you can do than to just try again. But sometimes there are actually some genuine stuff, some really good handy stuff that you can do. And sometimes, again, I say this to people all the time that some people just even, we are ahead of our time. We just want it now. We just want, you're applying for stuff that you're not even ready for. You don't even, I mean, I know one of my guys that what he does is like, he will look at people that mirrors his stories or what he wants to be in 5 years. He will look at all the steps they took to get that thing. So if he's going to get a scholarship, for example, and what's this person doing? You track the person down on LinkedIn. I was like, okay, he did this. He took out, okay, what am I missing? Then he prepares ahead of time for those things. And then eventually, by the time you're applying, you at least close to, because there's a clear idea of it's not just enough to say I've got bigger. And this last week I was still with a different mentee, and then he was going to apply for an award. And I'm like, yes, my role here is to support you, but I don't want to wait. He actually asked me for a reference. And I'm like, draft something, let me see, so that I cannot build it from what I know of you. Well, at least do the skeleton first, let me see what I can put together with it. And then when he put it back, I'm like, even you, the perception you have of yourself in this reference that you have drafted, I cannot give it. This is a global award. I mean, global award, you're wasting time. Do more work. Wait, can you just fix that? But then, if I wasn't able to give him that immediate, honest feedback, he would have made the application. When the rejection comes, he feel rejected, he feel unhappy that, oh, it's too much. I mean, of course, I'm not saying that sometimes we do actually take bold steps. Some things you're not qualified for, you show up anyway, because sometimes all you need to do is show up for some things. I understand that, but
And so I'm a Mandela Washington Fellow, 2016. The first time I had applied for the Mandela Washington Fellowship, I didn't get it. One thing I did differently when I was reapplying was to listen to every Mandela Washington Fellow that I could find that have shared their story, how they filled their applications, everything. I learned all the blog articles that were released by the Mandela Washington Fellowship on how to fill your application, everything I learned from it. Asked one or two other fellows who have been fellows already, just to learn from them. How did you apply? Because sometimes it's not that you are not qualified, it is in the way you tell your story.
absolutely.
So I realized that for those who have won, there was a way they told their story that made it compelling and appealing. I could be the straight-jacketed, serious, prim and proper, methodical, but sometimes people also want to see the humanity or the human angle of the things that you are doing. And sometimes you won't learn that until you learn from those who have gone ahead.
I think we're good with time, so I'll just do one more question and then we can wrap up. So again, if you reflect on your work and all of these things, I mean, I know that there have been several moments, but for the purpose of our audience and for the purpose of this show, what impact for you? What are those moments in your work in the last couple of years that you know that I wouldn't being back another time, I want to do this. This is my life. I'm committed to this thing. I built my last bet on that because what does impact look like for you, and what are some examples of those narrative that makes you feel like, this is important to me, this is really good, and I will continue to do this.
Impact for me looks like when our data is referenced and is used by major and local international organizations who need data to be able to do their work. For me, that tells me that my work is meaningful. So first, it's about the accuracy of my data. I want to make sure that every data released by Invictus Africa is making the kind of impact that it should achieve. And for me, that is where impact is. I want to make sure that our data is timely, that it is released at the time it is supposed to be released. I want to make sure that our data is complete, that for every data we release, you know that you need. So that's why anytime we release data, there is usually a point where we say note, so that it gives you some other context, around the data. I also want to make sure that as much as possible that our data is accurate, that you can't puncture holes in it. For me, that is impact. Just being able to go 1 year and nobody is coming to say the data that we have released, is inaccurate. And then also to be able to see that our data is relevant. Can people use it? Is it relevant for the impact that I want to make? Is it relevant for the impact that people want to make? For me, that is what impact looks like for me. And until we get there and we can tick these 5 boxes, in terms of accuracy, credibility, completeness, timeliness, reliability, until we reach that point, then I know that yes, fully we are making impact. Until data translates to impact, the work of those of us that are doing data and research is not complete. So that for me is also what the future looks like, what impact looks like. When I am able to pin my data to a particular impact, where people are able to say, oh my God, in Edo State, 2 women out of every 5 have experienced domestic violence. Let's begin to identify what the issues are. What are the gaps? What are the challenges? What do we need to do differently? Just because there is a data that has been released. So until data translates to impact, then our work is not yet done.
I agree with you. I do agree with you. Thank you very much. I just want, if you have anything else, one last thing you just want to share with the audience, this would be a good time to share it.
My final thought will be to every social entrepreneur: the world is waiting for you. The world is waiting for your impact. There is a girl out there waiting for you to do your work. There's a child out there waiting for you. There's a woman, a man, somewhere out there waiting for whatever is the idea that you have. And until you are bold enough to come out to do that, but to do it innovatively and differently, cross partner with those that you believe you can learn from. If possible, go and intern with them, even though you're an executive director. As much as possible, put in all of the effort to make sure that you make the world a better place.
Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful time there. Thank you for your time. Thank you for those timeless insights that you've shared about your progress, your work, and the lessons that you've learned in your work. I wish you. I have no doubt at all that you're going to do great, 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 great. So, and then our generation is excited to have people like you. This is all what we're trying to do here, just to bring in people that are going out of their way, that are believing that despite all the negativity around our country, around our societies, change is possible, newness is possible, we can have better opportunities, and then this is possible. So please, until next time, until next episode, where we'll bring another social entrepreneur, change maker into this show to share their ideas and thoughts with you. Please subscribe to the show so that you can hit on the notification button. Make sure you're getting when we post new updates and new episode on the platform. Please, thank you for having us, and thank you for sharing your time with us.